How's everybody doing? Energy in this room, come on. I'm interrupting lunch, I know. I apologize. I'll wait for Greg to give the green light here.
What?
I'll be waiting.
We got a green light?
I know, you're the MC. You tell me.
I get the MC. Okay, I'm going to MC this. Okay, so we're going to start for OT month. We're doing a presentation for dynamic paddlers.
Yeah, thanks.
I'll let you take over.
Great. Well, thanks for having me, Greg. I appreciate it.
No problem.
Awesome. Well, good morning, everybody. I guess good afternoon, and thanks for letting me converge upon your lunch. I suspect you have a lot of these over the course of your time here. So today, you're like, what's all this stuff? I promise what I lack in presentation, I will make up for in props, okay? How many paddlers do we have in the room? Kayakers? Just a few back here. Okay, who's ever thought about paddling with some of your patients or potentially some of your maybe clients, any capacity at all? Never. Well, we're going to change all of that after the next 45 minutes. So my name is Larry Gioia. I'm with Dynamic Paddlers here in Pittsburgh. Have you heard of Dynamic Paddlers before? You have heard of us. Awesome, perfect. What do you know, if anything, if you mind me asking?
I went to the spinal cord injury conference at Mercy, and they talked about you guys there, and they showed pictures, and
cool.
A couple of the, they have like patient presenters there, and a couple of those patients actually talked about.
Awesome, that's great to hear. I appreciate that. So real quick, a little bit about myself and then about who we are and what we do. So kayaking is what we do, specifically adaptive paddling. About myself, kind of where I'm coming from and what I do. So, my name is Larry, as I said. I'm a Pittsburgher. I live in Shadyside, part of the neighborhood. I paddle every waterway that we have here. I've been paddling for about 15 years. Sea kayaking, flat water paddling. I don't do the crazy stuff at Ohio Pile. That's not my bag, but I know a lot of people who do that. You know, what you see up here, if you guys can see this, is one of my passions is teaching and community building. And coming out into the community and getting people exposed to and aware of the things that exist relative to adaptive sports specifically. Now, I'll kind of give you my story of how I even got into this, specifically adaptive paddling here in just a moment. I'm with the American Canoe Association. If you're familiar with the ACA is the oldest organization in the United States that provides structure, classroom instruction, as well as certifications for people who want to learn how to paddle. I happen to be an instructor trainer with the ACA specifically for adaptive. Long and the short is I've been doing this adaptive paddling for about 4 years, and I'm one of 12 in the world who certify people like yourselves should you want to do this kind of thing with your clients or your patients. So this is not going to be being didactic and talking at you, I promise. So we're going to start with some true or false stuff. Are you guys ready? This is very simple. Let's get it going here. True or false? Kayaking is all about how strong you are and your athletic ability. False. Okay, good. You're so far so good. Kayaking is only upper body, right? It's false. It's a full body workout. I think it's one of the misconceptions about paddling. Because you're seated, you don't use your legs, and it's actually completely false. You use your entire body. All right, let's keep going. Whoops, I gave you one already. All right. You must have 2 perfectly functioning arms, legs, hands, extremities to paddle. Completely false. I'm all talking to this group because I think you're going to get a lot of, and you're going to get all of these, but so many of these conversations that I have, there's a misconception that because I have a limb difference, or I'm in a chair, or I use a prosthesis, I cannot possibly paddle, and that's completely false. I'm going to show that to you today. I use a wheelchair crutches, yeah, so I cannot kayak. We know that one's false. After kayaking, my face will hurt so much from smiling. Yes, man, you guys are nailing this. Yes, that's true. And then finally, I had a stroke, spinal cord injury, amputation. I can never get back on the water. Completely false. And so why do I share this with you all? Obviously, this group's a little bit more on the healthcare side of things. I talk to a lot of groups, a lot of just individuals, either coming out of rehab or coming back from, let's say, war or whatever, and like, I'll never do this again. Did it before an injury, and then here we are talking about there's actually a ton of opportunity, not just here in Pittsburgh, but elsewhere. And that's what we're here to talk about. How did I get into this? So in 2013, I was at the Chicago Boat Show. I was paddling around a pool. Just my job there was to make sure kids were safe on the water. This little guy right here, if you can see his smiling face, his name is Evan, as I've come to know over the years. Evan, paddling around the pool, going all over the place doing one of these jobs, so I paddle over to him, and I want to help Evan. And I'm in shock at what I see. Evan paddles with one arm. I can tell you, I'm sitting here in front of you today telling you this kid changed my life. now 6 years ago, almost 6 years ago, I knew nothing about disability. I didn't have a person in my life, at least that I knew of, that had disability, physical disability, intellectual disability. I didn't know. Didn't know what to say to this guy. What do I say? What do I do? Someone like yourself may know what to do. I had no clue. So here I am, this Evan character really got me thinking differently about inclusion, paddling, sports. If Evan can paddle like this and have a smile on his face when he does it, everyone should be able to do this. And so it really got me thinking about adaptive sports and coming back to Pittsburgh and getting involved in that. And so here we are a few years later. You can see up here what Dynamic Paddlers is. It's to fill that gap that's in the community. We have hand cycling, we have basketball, there's skiing, you name the sports, it's here. And some of you, anybody in adaptive sports that does anything with adaptive sports here? Okay, I know more PTs than OTs, but it's okay. There was a huge gaping hole in paddling, adaptive paddling specifically, and that's why I started this organization, to provide private instruction, one-on-one, hand-over-hand instruction, not as public programming, not as a inspiration for people by any means. I'm just sharing with what I know. I know paddling. You all know the healthcare. You all know the biomechanics of the body. And I work with people like you every single day to get people back on the water. So that's where we kind of fit in. It really serves as that bridge to independence. And I'll show you some of the equipment we have. You don't have to use any or all of this, but I want to show you what's at our disposal. I can tell you over the years I've worked with 500 plus paddlers of all varying abilities. Physical disabilities, spinal cord injury, traumatic brain injury, intellectual disabilities, you name it. I've never had someone I couldn't work with. And so I guess it just goes to show that there's a ton of opportunity, specifically in this sport. And oh, by the way, it's pretty inexpensive. Here's just some pictures of some of the people. You can see it ranges everywhere from young kids. I'll never forget one of the women that I worked with. Where is she? This woman's 92 years old. Paddles like a champion. I could talk about all of her background, but you can imagine fatigue starts to set in, and we have different ways of adapting for that. Kids as young as 5, 6. Oh, by the way, we work with able-bodied people as well, right? So it's truly all abilities, as you call it, appreciate. So that being said, I guess this goes without saying, but what do you see in these pictures? And they're maybe hard to see from back there. Shout them out. What do you see? Wheelchair.
Amputation.
Amputee. This gentleman here is 95. Had 3 strokes. Paddling at North Park Lake because he wants to. What I see is opportunity. What I say is, and I guess what you could pass along to your patients and your clients who think they cannot do this, if you can sit, you can paddle. When we talk about paddling, we get rid of the crutches, we get rid of the chair, we get rid of walking aids, because in this picture, water is the ultimate equalizer. Every person in this picture has a disability. There's spinal cord injury in this picture. There's traumatic brain injury in this picture. There's spina bifida in this picture. There's limb difference in this picture, amongst others. So the benefits are pretty straightforward. I think you all understand that, just given your nature of work. Cardiovascular, strength, muscle memory, fine motor skills, believe it or not. We'll talk about what that looks like. It's very low impact. As you all know, water is just a great resistance tool, right? So I guess what I want to do is pivot away from this and kind of get into what the more important stuff is. So what do we have at our disposal in terms of equipment, in terms of considerations for getting people on the water? And this is just a portion of what exists. This is the stuff I use all the time. And by the way, I think it's important that it's a bit overwhelming. I intentfully came in here to show all this stuff. I would never come out with a client on the water's edge with all this stuff and say, let's pick and choose what we got to use. We only use what we have to use. Just like with your clients, you're only going to use what you have to use or what techniques you have to use. So the first thing we always consider when it comes to paddling, because it's a seated position, is seating. So when you think about seating in a boat, so those of us who've kayaked, what's the perfect paddling position? Any idea? Like, do we lay back? Do we sit up? Do we lean forward? Throw it out. Any ideas?
90 degrees.
90 degrees, or sitting up nice and tall. Exactly, right? And so the first thing we got to think about is seating relative to stability and grip and all the kinds of things. Let's talk about seating first. We build seats. I think what's important to recognize, there's a lot of equipment out there. I'm going to show you some of this stuff. A lot of my clients, when I first started doing this is adaptations at its finest. I'm talking foam and duct tape to make seats. This would come out, and so I have a seat here. Very quickly, inexpensively, I can make things out of just foam and duct tape. We've advanced since foam and duct tape. to more kind of commercial equipment. And so you see up here some different seating systems. That's well and good, but remember, our clients don't want to come play with foam and duct tape. They want to get on the water. And so the equivalent of that piece of foam, I now have at our disposal from a system that's made for kayaks. And I'm going to move this up here so you can all look at it. We can go up afterwards and look at it. But effectively, I can accomplish the same exact thing, and I apologize, this is a little loud. I can accomplish the same exact thing with this seating system, right? So I can put structure around an individual just by putting things like this, building up structure from like a spinal cord injury, for example. Someone who doesn't have a lot of, they don't have hip flexors like we do, they don't have the trunk stability. I can very quickly build structure around somebody, right? And get them in and out of the boat very quickly just by putting things like this in place. So what else with seating? And this is where you guys come in. How do I get someone to sit upright if they don't have any of its trunk stability? What could I do to the seat? Yeah, you recline them, and how do you do that? You very simply, and maybe this is not, maybe it's more of a PT term, but I can put dump in the seat. Is that a term that OTs use? Maybe not dump, putting dump in the seat. Or effectively I can take a wedge, a foam wedge, and put it under their butt and essentially lift their legs up. By lifting their legs up, I push them back. Very simple things we can do with a few adaptations to get someone sitting upright at 90 degrees. Okay, great, so I've got some seating stuff. So I'm sitting up nice and tall, but if someone starts, I work with a guy who's 6'8", spinal cord injury, pretty mid-level spinal cord injury, incomplete. He has some really good stability going over to the sides. I work with a lot of people who, if you touch them, they're going over, right? They don't have this to control the trunk, so what do we do? What would you imagine we might be able to do to provide some more stability on this platform of the boat? You could brace them, yeah, potentially. Yeah, possibly. I think one of the things that's important, especially with kayaking, we're not strapping anybody to a boat. No seat belts, no, because it's a good point, because I actually see the rowers do this all the time, and it like makes me cringe. If someone's like attached to the boat and they go over, they're gonna be able to get back out, right? You can absolutely, there you go. Perfect example, I work with a gentleman who's missing a left leg. I take a sandbag and put it on that side of the boat to offset the balance, okay? So, all good ideas. What about if I just simply, and this is gonna hopefully stay here, what if I just use something like an outrigger or a pontoon, right? Something like this allows us to very quickly and easily offset without creating a sandbag, without putting a lot of weight in the boat. This is gonna go back on me. And then essentially think of it as like training wheels for a kayak. And then we can actually move them in. I could take one off, so I can do many combinations of using this adaptation for stability. I can tell you I work with people who are over 300 pounds. In this boat with these outriggers, they can't tip it over. You'd really have to work to tip it over. Here's an example of when I don't have this stuff with me. It's hard to see. I was outward bound in Hong Kong last year. They didn't have this stuff. So I used bamboo and 2 old kayaks to create outriggers on a canoe. So talk about, like, I don't always have this. I'm showing you kind of like what's possible. But if I don't have this, I'm making it up as I go. Okay. Questions so far? Comments? Is this boring? Yes, it is boring. Tell me more.
I have a question.
Okay.
After working with that many people and with such a variety of disabilities, have you come up with just like a standard like assessment that you do, like an initial like evaluation?
It's a great question. Yeah, it's a great question. So you can imagine a lot of these folks I only meet for the first time when they come. I meet them at the first time at the water. So a lot of what I try to do is try to engage over the phone. I collect a very simple medical history, just to understand kind of medication. You can imagine the usual, but the kind of questions that I ask, and this is where I need your expertise, the one I always ask just to get at what their stability is. If you were sitting on the edge of a bed and I pushed you on one side, would you be able to counteract? I ask those kinds of questions just to kind of get a sense, but then it all happens at the water. Someone presents much differently than they are on a medical form, and you all know this much better than I do. I always love the one where the guy's 6'8". Actually, he's a bilateral amputee, so he's actually 4'4", right? So no joking aside, but like they say on the form, but they show up, I'm like, ooh, I didn't plan for that. And so a lot of it, the short of the long, is I collect medical history, very simple stuff, and I usually do like a kind of over the phone kind of questionnaire, and then we make it up as we go once we're on the water, or once we get on the water, right? And I bring all this stuff with me, It's usually put away in a box, and then we pull it out as needed. This is always a fun one, and I really enjoy this topic because, as I said from the very beginning, transfers, independence. I don't want to be picking people up. Maybe I'm a bigger guy, but I don't want to be carrying people. You get into the world of putting more risk into the equation when you're transferring somebody, especially when you're on an unstable surface like water, right? So what could we do? Well, you can imagine there's the traditional kind of like, let's get 25 people around one human and pick them up and carry them. That's really cool. That's very personal. It's almost too personal, as you all can appreciate, right? Here I am as one of the bigger guys, and this is back to, I was in Hong Kong a couple times teaching this stuff, and there's like 50 people picking me up. It's really overwhelming. It's too overwhelming. If we have to, we try to launch in spots where someone can walk over. Look, rough surfaces, we don't always have the luxury of having an accessible dock or an accessible launch. So these are the things we consider when we're paddling. But one of the really, really cool things that I love is it doesn't solve all of this, but how can I possibly get someone in a boat by themselves without having a Hoyer lift at the water's edge? What do? Well, there's a couple things we could do. The first thing is that when you look at these pictures, this is the water at North Park Lake. The boat is right on the edge of the water, people are in the water, there's loose footing. I want to eliminate all of that and ideally get them in the boat on the stable ground first. And you see these big balloon wheels? That's what I use this for. Let me show you how this works. Okay, so I'm gonna take the boat and go here. Now, you could imagine clients, patients actually really like this because they could go for a free ride as well. And so this now begins to allow us to do many things that are otherwise fairly risky, very simply by adding some wheels to the equation. I can roll them right in the water. So you can imagine someone's in the boat, I can roll them right in the water, at the water's edge, over big rocks, over big bumpy stuff. I'm taking myself out of the equation. They've transferred into the boat by themselves. I take the wheels off, the wheels float, they float, let's go. But how the heck do they get in the boat? That's the question. I don't know, Hoyer lift them up? Nope, I don't want to do that either. You know, this is essentially a shower stool, a modified shower stool that can get someone in the boat pretty easy. You can imagine now what you're looking at. Now someone can self-transfer over with a chair, right? They self-transfer from chair to here, right? Now what happens? Legs in. Now I'm not going to do all this because it usually takes one person behind me. Just a slide. This is what you guys use every day, right? I presume. Shower stool that we modified. This comes over here. If they have any ounce of energy, which most people do, but if they don't, we can work around that too. Pop this up. I pop up. This slides out. That's it. Boom. So now you can imagine, well, so what if someone doesn't have their shoulders? We talk about rotator cuffs, exposing shoulders. Well, then all I have to do, I wouldn't do it quite, it's okay. What I would do is I would just put a couple pieces of foam, maybe 3 blocks of foam down here. So now it's a game of inches. So now they go 2 inches, take a break, quick push up, I pull the block out, down 2 inches, and they're in the seat in a matter of minutes. The adaptations that we use for kayaking are what you guys are all using with your patients every day in a little different context. Cool? Thank you for that. Cool. Okay, so we talked about seating. We talked about some transfer stuff, how do we get to and from the water. So there it is again. Same thing. Great example. This is the Thelma Lovett YMCA in the Hill District. These wheels can pretty much go anywhere. I can push this off of a pool deck. There's a 7-inch lip there, right? I can go on the pool deck, put them right in the water, take the wheels off, and they're good to go. Hand and grip adaptations. So this is also a fun one because someone says, well, I have no use of a hand. I've got a contracture in my hand. I can't even open my fingers. I have no fine motor skills. I can't grip anything. I'm missing a limb. Well, if I told you we could do that too. If I don't have a hand, how do I hold on to something? No, you can't tape their hand to it. They don't have an elbow either. Let's say it's above the elbow amputation. So a couple things we could do. Let's work with the most basic. I'm going to work into loss of limb. Let me just go basic stuff first. Let's say someone has very limited use of grip, or they've had a stroke, hemopharesis, they're missing fingers, they can't grip, or they have grip that they can't even let go of. So this is just a regular old kayak paddle. Let's use a different one. Good old kayak paddle. I'm going to pass this around in a second so you all can see this. This very simple back of the hand adaptation. You can pass it around. There's a couple different variations on a theme there. See this? All this is a back of the hand adaptation that's not locking someone's hand to anything. Okay? Let's say I can't even grip anything. That's pretty good. And I'm not ratcheting it down, but I'm putting it down just enough to hold enough grip there. It feels pretty good to me. You can put your hand in that. I'm just used 2 there as an example. That's pretty good, right? If I really had to do this thing, I could do that. I could put 2 together. That's what you're looking at there. You can put your hand in it. You can see how that works inside of it. That's pretty good, okay? What if I just use a bicycle inner tube tire? Or inner tube? These don't even cost anything, right? Like, they throw these away all the time. So I take this with some zip ties and zip tie it onto the paddle. I'm not going to do it here in the interest of time, but I can do that. And it creates the pocket for me to put my hand in. And then what I can do is I can create a quick release that I can tighten it down. And oh, by the way, when you put your hand in here, just take it out. That's an example where someone has no grip. If you guys can see that back there. Okay, I'm using an inner tube tire as another example. Okay, let's get to the fun one of I have a limb difference. I don't have a hand. I have a really high amputation. What do I do now? A very simple bracket. Okay. I've worked with bilateral amputees all the time. There's not many, but I've worked with them. A lot of warriors. So this guy goes on here, and what you're looking at here is a very simple wrist adaptation that can be done with the teeth, you can imagine. So everything can be done by themselves. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to pass this around. It has a disc on the bottom of it. That disc becomes the mechanism to connect into this. All right? Goes in like that. Now you can imagine this goes all the way up here. It's fine, put it all the way up there. They're just using it like this. No arm, right? Limb difference comes right out. So this is another good example, and this one is on that example back there. I'll pass these around so you can kind of play with it. But another great way, someone tells me they don't have a hand, you can paddle. So this is a fun one. I have a client, neither of these things worked for her. So I went back to the old foam and duct tape route. So I don't think I have a picture of her. Oh, here it is, yeah, right here. This is her hand, right? So congenital amputee got the residual limb of a thumb. So she can kind of grip stuff, but how the heck is she going to grip a paddle? Because that doesn't work for her. She doesn't like it, and she's got tiny wrists. What you're looking at is 2 pieces of foam I've created a clamshell out of, right? So she can grip. What you're looking at right there is this goes on here, like this. We clamp it down with a like a zip tie. She puts her hand inside of here, and she holds on the paddle with her thumb.
If you had a high amputee, you attach it to a paddle, how do you get the paddles in the water?
Oh man, that's like a softball. You just threw me right there. Perfect, thank you. Yes. I did not play. What's your name? Michelle, like that's like perfect. Thank you. All right, let's do that. How the heck would we get this paddle in the water if someone is holding it up here for the sake of demonstration? If someone's holding this way up here, come on. Like, oh, by the way, it doesn't have to look pretty, it just has to work. So now I figured out the seating, I figured out I'm in the boat, I figured out how I can grip the paddle, but this ain't gonna work. It's not sustainable, especially if I'm going anywhere, any kind of distance, right? What if I had a way to hold this paddle so that they didn't even have to hold it? They'd move it themselves, but they wouldn't have to hold the paddle. Check this out. Okay? I got an answer for everything. I feel like I'm on like an infomercial here or something. No, but seriously, right? So this is called a paddle pivot. It takes the equation out of, like, the gentleman that I talked about was 90-some years old, had no strength here, none. So we use this. Now it takes that out of the equation. All he has to do is this. So this is what we use for someone who doesn't either have the grip, or if they have a limb difference. Well, then I'll just build an adaptation off, like, let's say it's a really high amputation, where they can move it. And I'll show you pictures of a guy I worked with in Hong Kong who has no arm. and I'll show you the pictures, the things we made for him with foam and duct tape. How does that paddle reach the water? I'll put this over here. Imagine these wheels aren't on here for the sake of time. The water line's about here, okay? This boat's sitting in the water comes up to about here. Well, if someone's really tall and all they can do is this, they're not putting that paddle in the water, right? Well, how might you be able to put the paddle in the water? What would you do? Speak up.
Curve the paddle. Yeah.
Okay, I could curve the paddle. That would help. But telescopic, that's all. I like that idea. We're going to patent that one too. That's good. Yeah, so you're right. But okay, I like it. So if I angle the blade, that's cool, but it's always in the water. So I'll be like pushing and pulling against myself every single time. Let's just do that for a second. How about that? Okay? So that's a spot on observation. If I do this, so that solves one part of the equation. Definitely helps. But the blade's in the water the whole time. Well, what if I just made the paddle longer? I feel like MacGyver here. I've been effectively creating a 10-foot paddle, thereby allowing the person to paddle with nothing more than this motion. Perfect tee up, Michelle, thank you. Does that help? Yeah. Let's talk about a few more things, and then I want to kind of open for Q&A, and then we can kind of look at this stuff. This is a pretty cottage industry, right? There's no one people mass producing this equipment. So when you can't mass produce it, you got to make it up. Again, it so happens that I was in Hong Kong, and they don't have any of this stuff. There's a gentleman right here who has no right arm, none. So I can't use any of this stuff. So we made something equivalent to that so that he can paddle with one arm. But how do I attach the paddle to the boat but so it doesn't fall out? I took foam and duct tape and I took 5 pieces of bamboo. I'm in Hong Kong, what am I gonna do? And stripped them down to create pins to hold the foam together and created this thing out of foam and duct tape, effectively creating a base with a little keyhole in it. So the paddle equivalent of that, it sits in there, right? And it goes on the deck of the boat. We taped the hell out of this thing. It sits on there. He puts the blade in there. I can show you videos after. He's not paddling with any arm. He's paddling with one arm in the open ocean. This guy's also a hell of an athlete, but it could be done. Here's another example of another piece of equipment that I'm actually working with the founders on in California to give some feedback on. It's called an angle oar. Same concept, but they're taking the paddle and actually creating a mechanism that actually breaks it down in the middle, and you can angle it like this. That's another example of something I'm working with right now. I'll have it here this summer. So this is Robert, and he gave me permission to use his picture and everything, so full disclosure. Here's Robert. It may be hard to see. I'm going to put the lights on a little bit, okay? Because I think it's pretty fun to see. Can you see that? Okay, here's Robert. This boat, paddling at North Park Lake. He's using the paddle pivot. You can't see it, but he's using a paddle pivot. Hand adaptation, he's using a back of the hand adaptation for grip. He has outriggers for stability, and he's doing some lateral stuff kind of in here. Now, I'm not asking you to throw out what you think his disability might be, but I want you to watch this, and then I'm going to tell you what his disability actually is, because he allows me to say that. Watch this. Watch his biomechanics. Watch his grip. It doesn't take much to move this boat. Robert had a stroke a couple years ago. Hemophoresis. Very limited use of his left-hand side of his body, which you all know much better than I do. Very limited use of his arm. Very limited use, and I share this with you because he told me, he's like, I went to my physical therapist, and they said, whatever you're doing, whatever you're doing to get this contracture to open up, keep doing it. Now, I'm not suggesting it was only this. This had a lot to do with it. I can't tell you how many clients I've worked with where it was either arms or core. I work with a lot of kids on the spectrum. They're pretty sedentary, right? Losing weight. I mean, you guys know this much better than I do, but I can tell you that just these simple things, getting someone on the water, doing that is not just eye-opening. It's pretty magical, and people are actually changing lives. It's pretty cool. All I'm doing is providing the equipment. right? And all you're doing is, helping them get back to, who they are and what they need to be doing. One of the things we didn't talk about, and I can reference it here for a second, we talked a lot about physical disability, right? Because those are typically the most challenging in terms of adaptation. I work with people with intellectual disabilities all the time. Whether it's someone on the autism spectrum, very high functioning, low functioning, traumatic brain injury, visual impairments, hearing deficits, you name it. We just don't adapt the boat. We adapt our teaching style. What would I do for somebody? This is pretty simple, but I think this is kind of where a lot of the things that you all do, as I understand it. I would just adapt. If I left and right, well, I'm going to paddle left and right. Well, my kids don't understand left and right. They know colors, though. Of course they do. Well, okay, red and blue. You pick the color. I come with a roll of tape. Put a smiley face. I don't care. Let them do it. Smiley face, frown face. Smiley face, frown face. Whatever. We adapt the teaching style, just as you all think about what works for your patients here as well. Okay, visual impairment. There's another very simple one. What would you do for someone for a visual impairment in paddling? Not about teaching them how to kayak, but just let's go about orientation. What would we do? Texture, 100%. Dice them. Put some dice them on there. Put some kind of padding on there. You're essentially creating an index. But I like this one because I can go to Starbucks and get a ton of them. Or like barbecue stick, right? I put this on and create essentially an index down the spine of the paddle so they know where the top of the paddle always is. And then I can orient this for where their hand should be. I put it right where I think their hand should be, boom, right? There's some really cool stories, not just stories, but some well-known adventurers. There are two gentlemen, both completely blind, Lonnie Bedwell and Eric Weinmayer. If you don't know these guys, go look them up. They paddled the Grand Canyon together, blind. It just so happens that Weinmayer actually climbed Everest a couple times too. Like, adaptations for them are more thinking about audio-visual stuff, right? Yeah, they can't see, but they can hear. It's pretty fascinating what they can do. I know I've kind of exhausted everybody. Hopefully I've given you some things to think about. At the end of the day, this is very seasonal, as you can appreciate. I had no intention of being here with snow today. Our season starts in May. Well, yeah, right, May. At the end of the day, what we do is what we refer to as concierge kayaking, right? It's as scheduled. I have a full-time job. I don't do this full-time. I do this out of the good, like all of you fine people. It's kind of, we do other things outside of work because we love to do it. It's concierge. I show up. You just have to bring yourself. So if you have clients, you have patients who want to kind of come out and learn to do this, or get back in the boat, or just want to experience something, this is what we do. I have all the equipment. I personalize every experience for every individual based on all the things you see here, if even required. We paddle at North Park Lake a lot. If you guys know North Park, up in Allison Park. I paddle the rivers everywhere. Literally, they just have to show up with a smile on their face and ready to do something different. That's what we do. And we take care of everything else. Locations, it's literally endless. I've traveled all around the country with boats. Like I said, I've gone international already, which is pretty fun. So, I've given brochures there. If you have any interest at all, your clients or family members or whatever have any interest in this at all, happy to talk to them. And if it's not paddling, quick side note, I also run the Pittsburgh Adaptive Sports Network, which is a consortium here in Pittsburgh. There are about 60 organizations that are part of this. Hand cycling, basketball, skiing, shuffleboard, you name the sport, either recreationally or competitively. I'm happy to connect them in that capacity as well. This is just, my thing is paddling, right? And I guess the other plug I'll give you too is that this is now an Olympic sport. So as of 2 years ago in Rio Olympics, Tokyo 2020, you will see, not this boat, but you'll see much more faster boats. You'll see para-canoe in the Olympics. It'll be the second year they're running it. And I'm working with a Paralympian here in Pittsburgh to get him to Tokyo in 2020, which is pretty exciting. And he started in one of our classes doing this. It's pretty fun. It's not about that though. I just want to give you the context that this is a very solidified thing. Look, I'm very excited to talk to each and every one of you, either before, now, or after, about what opportunities exist. And I just appreciate you guys for your time, and I'm happy to take questions if there are any at this time. And by all means, we can kind of look at the stuff or whatever you want to do. But I appreciate all of you, so thank you very much. Thanks. Hey, thanks so much for listening to this video today. Hopefully you found it informative and enjoyable and a little educational in the process. If there's any one ask I have of you, if you found this useful or you know one other person who you think would benefit from learning about adaptive paddling, I ask that you share this video. Share it with them on social media, in an email, and you can contact us at the information below. Thanks so much. We'll see you outside. Keep calm and paddle on.